Hey everybody, another episode of the Indie Hour. It's episode 41. My God, what a road we've been down with the Indie Hour as we uncover various skirmish games, tabletop war games, mass combat games, spaceship games, sea ship games, volleyball games, racing games, football games, hockey games, all kinds of games. You play with toy soldiers and expand everybody's worldview of what that means. Yeah, I noticed my shirt today. Apparently this is not the key green that I thought it was, but my Bafico Hamilton shirt is currently transparent. So you're wondering why I have a big hole in my chest. That's why. I hope everybody's having a great week so far. This series is as selected by the GMG patrons. And every single week they will nominate up to 20 different games. We vote on them, and then one gets selected weekly to get a big spotlight shone at. And today it's Untitled Pirate Game. I'm trying to coin a phrase here, so I'm going to call this, I started off with Psalm-like, but it's almost more Sean-like, in that the Metal King himself, Sean Sutter, and of course, Kev over at Forbidden Psalm has done like a kind of like the bigified version of this. This seems to be like a trend or a style that kicked off 4 or 5 years ago. It's become really popular, and it's almost like an indie sleaze style of gaming. Lots of hand-drawn illustrations for your diagrams, miniatures agnostic or like punk rock, like hand sculpted and artistic sculpted miniatures like Sean does. And it's available on itch. So if you want to check this game out for yourselves, you can jump over to itch.io. It's pay what you want. And you can see here, this is a Legends of the High Seas indie sleaze game. So 2 or more, because it has multiplayer rules, miniature war games to represent your crews, has full campaign rules. You can see here some campaign examples. I'll just quickly take you through the itch page. For pirate crews, Royal Navy crews, it's got like a variety of wonderful scenarios that are all sort of like archetypes of the pirate genre, right? Of the legendary high seas that didn't really exist like that, just like the Old West wasn't super duper like that either, but depictions, of course, in media, film, movies, books. And when I say indie sleaze, I mean this awesome hand-drawn illustrations. You can see the diagrams here for setup and deployment, all done by hand. This is kind of the way I'm looking at. And it's obviously heavily inspired by classic warband games like Mordheim. You can see the campaign rules here for experience, crews, lasting injuries, and narratively driven in that there's a giant, huge multiplayer extravaganza set of missions like this one where you have to stop a dark ritual from happening. Man, if I still had my Fireball Island board game, that would be perfect for this. And is sort of like a generally simple core set of rules that are easy to learn and have lots of narrative play. So let's dive in. This is written by Stewart and let's go through the rest of the credits. You guys can check it out. I'll let Stewart do the boilerplate here. It's a miniature agnostic skirmish game set in an alternate fantasy golden age of piracy. The game is heavily inspired by Pirates of the Caribbean movies, the Pirate Board, TTRPG, skirmish games like Frostgrave, Blood and Plunder, Legends of the High Seas, and the one-page rules catalog. In Untitled Pirate Game, 2 or more players use the miniatures to represent their crew and build custom forces to represent warring factions. A crew consists of a few miniatures. To fight a battle, players first build a pirate crew with miniatures they have on hand. Then they can equip their crews with ranged and melee weapons, hats, and armor. Hats being a main feature of equipment. This game makes me really happy. Because what are pirates without their cool hats? In fact, isn't it Wallace and Gromit where the pirate has to go and find... No, it wasn't Wallace and Gromit. It was the same guy that made Wallace and Gromit. There was like a pirate movie where he had to go and find his hat. And his hat was very important to him. And instead of an I go, you go or alternating activation system, players draw numbered initiative coins randomly from a bag that determine the order of activations at the start of each round. So there's a lot of like RNG in here. In fact, previous game that we checked out on here, the Idols of Torment by Blackmagic Craft had a similar activation system. And the game mechanics are designed to be simple, silly, and fun, and in no way aim to adhere to a historical detail. So leave that at the door, man. If you're expecting a simulation, this is not a simulation. And of course, it's published under the Pirate Board third-party license. So words are by Stewart, illustrations by Daniel Guerrilla, Carlsum, and editing is by the Manuscript Agency. And of course, we have a huge host of playtesters here, which are, of course, well-liked and thanked. 50 pages is our core document, and I've got it here in spreadsheet layout, just so you guys can see it a little bit easier. And we already saw this actually just on the landing page for the itch, but you can see here the core mechanics, right? So 28 to 32 mil base or models based. You can use any historical models. Black Scorpion makes a wonderful range of miniatures. Obviously, the guys at Blood and Plunder and Firelock Games make plastic sets in every possible variety. So there's a bajillion different like eras and nations and all kinds of stuff in there. And then your dice set is pretty simple. It's a handful of D6s. So if you have like one of those D&D dice sets where you get 4 D6s for rolling your stat block, and then you have the rest of the polyhedrals, so like a D8, D12, D10, and a D20, then you're fine. You got what you need. And then modifiers. When a modifier applies to the outcome of your roll, simply add or subtract the value to the roll. So for example, hide armor grants +1 to your endurance value. So a 6+ endure would go to a 5+ instead. So you're adding to your roll. When a modifier applies to the number of dice you roll, you add that many dice. For example, there's a basic shield granting +1 endure dice. So adding a single red dice to your blue dice pool when rolling to endure the incoming hits. The model does not suffer an extra wound for failing an endure with the extra dice. They simply have an extra chance to roll it. So bonuses of dice are that whatever you're trying to cancel, you get more chances to do so. And sometimes you might have negative dice where you got to roll an extra one and drop a high one. Measure edge to edge in inches. 360 line of sight, and some basic, like, what is the words? Some common sense line of sight rules, so not getting too hung up on it, because they assume if you're playing this goofy of a game, you are not worried about that kind of stuff. And then it is a kitchen table size game, so 3x3, although the big multiplayer ones like the Ritual will be on a 4x4. 10 pieces or more of terrain to keep things interesting. All right, preparing your models and crew. So in a campaign game, there's 2 ways to play the game. You can play it campaign, you can play it skirmish. Skirmish, you get 1,000 gold coins to buy stuff with because you're trying to, get to use all the fun toys and you're playing a bigger game. But it's a one-off, so you have to track any of the post-game sequence. And in campaign, you get half as much, 500. To put a crew together, follow the instructions in the recruiting and equipping your crew section. And sometimes there'll be limitations for model counts, like a 0 to 1 or something for veterans. All right, our profile. So their name and the position in the crew. So like, what do they do, who they are. So you give them the name, the position in the crew is on their crew roster. Crew traits, rules that apply to a model depending on their role inside the crew. Their movement value in inches, their endurance, the target number required on a D6 to endure a hit, almost like their save. Wounds, how many unendured hits they can take before they're out of action. And then their ranged melee weapon profiles and traits. So you're usually going to buy these. Rules that apply to the weapons a model is equipped within game, like the number of attacks and weapons they have. So how you do, it's a little bit like the 40k stat line, honestly. The 40k stat line, right, your top block is like your save, your objective control, and your wound stat. And everything else is on your weapon stats. This is very much like that. So your stat block's going to change depending on what you equip them with. And then their hat, armor, and pets. I love this so much. Rules that apply to hats, armor, or pet models that they're equipped with. Skills, this can very often change how your weapons work or how you interact with the table. And then how many XP you've earned so far. All right, game structure. It's into game rounds, play rounds, and model activation. So very much, again, sort of like a 40k round structure. So round is both players' turns. Turns is a single model's activation. And then an activation is when a player activates a model, they can take 2 single actions or a double action. So it has like long and short skills, basically. And then initiative. After both players have deployed their crews, as per the scenario, the winner of a roll-off draws initiative coins equal to the number of models in their crew, and then their opponent does the same. So you roll off for initiative, and then let's say I had 6 models. I would pull 6 coins from the bag. You had 5, you'd pull the remaining 5, and then you put them down in numbered order. So they're 1 to 30. And then you organize them top to bottom, and then you go activating. Starting the lowest number, so they go first, and then goes to the highest. So you just do them sequentially. So let's say I had 2, 6, 8, 9, 13, right? Then you had 3, 7, 25, 28. You'd have a couple models going interspersed with mine, and very late on, you'd have 2 models that would go last. The players with the next lowest number goes, blah, blah, blah. And this means you can incorporate multiplayer games pretty easily, right? Because you have a big bag of tokens that allow you to go. This continues until every model is activated, at which point the crews need to check to see if they route. So a route quest a lot like Mordheim, right? So at the end of the round, you got to see if taking enough casualties to run away. I love this monkey with his head blown off on the right. And then routing. After every model on the battlefield is activated, if a crew's lost more than half their models, they make a route check. Roll a d6 for every remaining model. On a 3+, the captains continue. On a 4+, the crew member continues. So it's not whole crew and then everyone stays. It's literally everybody's checking individually to see if they run away. If they fail, they just go away, but they're not injured. And if they pass, and if after all models have completed the road checks, there's no models left, the game's just a draw. So if everybody runs away at the same time, because both players, literally the entire table could clear if that happens. But if somebody has something left, they're considered to have won the game. And if the scenario objective have not been achieved after 6 full rounds are played, players roll a d3 to determine how many further rounds they can play, so overtime basically. If it's not done by then, it's a ceasefire and they retreat into a draw. So a nice simple way of ending the game. And then some core actions. So you can move, you can aim, you can shoot, you can reload as simple actions. And then taunt as well. Cast a spell if you're a caster, or heal someone who is if you're a surgeon. So these are some nice, like, everybody can do these if they've got the rule for it. And then double actions are things like dash, move twice your move value, so it's like a run move. Charge, go in and then get into base contact. You get a melee attack against the model and gets +1 attack dice for charging, which can be assigned to an equipped weapon of the choice. So if you have like a pistol and a sword, you give like the sword or the pistol potentially. Actually, probably not the pistol. If it can't get in base contact, it moves as far as it can, but can't come within an inch of an enemy model because that's their control range. And then challenge someone to a duel if you're the captain. If it's declined, the enemy captain immediately makes a route check because they're a coward. Basically, if your two captains start fighting, you gotta see if the if one of them doesn't want to do it. If he just like bows out, then your whole crew might run away. If they do not rout, the attacking captain makes a free melee attack against the enemy with a +2 attack dice to the fight. Fight back is skipped. Step back or consolidate like normal. If the enemy captain was taken out of action, gain D3 XP. If a challenge is accepted, remove the captain model from the battlefield, and after marking their position with a token, and pause the battle. So basically, you go aside and you fight a little melee with each other. You make a simultaneous ranged attack with a pistol, and you make your endure rolls. And in the you make D3 wounds if it's not endure, because it's like a cinematic fight. You do like a bullet time thing. The players then roll off, rerolling any matching results. The loser of the roll-off subtracts their roll from the winner's roll and makes endure check rolls equal to the difference and suffers D3 wounds per hit not endured. And then no fight back, step back or consolidate. And you just repeat until one guy dies, the other one does. So you're not actually rolling to hit as normal. You're doing this fencing action, basically. And you return the victorious captain to their position on the battlefield and continue the battle. They gain D3 XP instead of 1 for taking the enemy captain out of action. So I love it's just like its own action to have like a cinematic duel. And then it includes gunfighting and melee. It's a very like cinematic and pirate appropriate mechanic. And immediately my brain went to Inigo Montoya fighting the 11-figured man in the castle at the end of Princess Bride, right? We got special movement rules, so like barging into people, jumping, falling, climbing around the table. And then our core combat skills. So obviously 2 types, right? Because it's a pirate game, so there are some firearms in here. So you have range combat and melee combat. First one's range combat. So you're going to declare a target and check for cover. So is the model obscured or not? If 50% of the defending model is on or behind cover, then drawing true line of sight, the defending model gets +1 to their endure value. So like a 6+ endure would be a 5+ endure, and then it could be modified still for armor and stuff too. Love this monkey with his gun misfiring and blowing his own head off. Roll to hit. Attacker chooses a single range weapon to fire or a grenade to throw at the target and rolls a number d6 equal to its attack value. So usually on the weapon I wish they'd put an example on in here. That's my one note for Stewart is if you're going to talk about stuff, give us an example. The art is super cool, but just one example firearm would make this way more easy to parse. For every result of a 4 or 5, the attacker scores a hit. For every 6, they score 2 hits because it's critical. And then note, if 3 or more 1s are rolled on a weapon with a firearm trait, you misfire. Suffer wounds equal to the number of 1s rolled. No endure rolls because it just blows up in your hands. And if 3 more 1s are rolled together with a grenade, the explosion places the blast marker over the model that threw it, and each model under the blast marker suffers d6 wounds. Because it blows up, you just drop it at your feet. And then finally roll to endure. The defender rolls a number of d6 equal to the number of hits, and for every dice that rolls equal to or better than the defender's endure value, 1 hit's canceled. So you're just doing dice pools against dice pools, right? You're generating a dice pool with 6s exploding into 2, and then your opponent's rolling their endure value, but it can only cancel 1, so there's no exploding 6s on endure. So you do have the advantage slightly to the attacker. And then finally, out of action, if you got no wounds remaining, they're removed from play. And then you got to make sure that if you go out of model, then take the number of models that have gone out of action from the highest initiative coins that you have. So if you had 6 models down, you just lost 1. You pull the highest initiative value coin out because that way you're still going in the order that you're supposed to be. Basically, they come off from the back. And then melee combat. The attacker rolls a number of d6 equal to their total attack dice value of their melee weapons, like a sword or whatever. And for every 4 or 5, they do a hit, and 6 is 2 hits. Remember, if you charge, you get +1 to your attack dice. So 2 attack dice would become 3, etc. Roll to endure, same process. Out of action, same process. Remove the initiative coins, and then fight back. The defending model can then fight back with their melee weapon. Follow steps 1 to 3, and this does not count as an activation. Models don't get +1 attack dice when fighting back. Then you stick back or consolidate. If nobody was taken out of action, the model that charged must move back an inch. If 1 or 2 models taken out of action, the other may make a free move up to 3 inches in any direction, but not within one of the enemies. So you can like dive into cover, move around to an objective, whatever, when you're done a fight. So pretty simple and pretty similar processes. It's basically opposed dice pools. If you've played Kill Team in 40K, this is a very similar process. With the one thing is that you do an all or nothing hit and strike back in the melee side, and there's no parrying. I would like to see a parry mechanic, but I guess the endure rolls are the parry mechanic here. And then spell lists for like our different like spells we could have, things like Flame Breath, Foresight, Expel, Circle Protection, Psychic Speed, and Tempest. Everyone who's a psychic knows these abilities, and then you could potentially mishap when you do this too. If you roll 11, is it a D66? Yeah. If the cast rolls the same result on both types of attempting to cast any kind of spell, you have to see what happens. So if you roll double ones, you and everyone within D6, if you suddenly vomit thick black liquid and suffer D3 wounds. On double twos, hundreds of tiny crabs swarm you. They're harmless, but you're -2 to endure values for the rest of the battle because you're scary. Birds suddenly swoop and your opponent makes a melee attack with 2 sets of claws with a total of 4 attacks relentless against the caster. So like just terrible things happen. And that's it. So those are the core mechanics of the game. Nice and simple. You're looking at 10 pages of like core rules for the stat lines. It'll make more sense once you start seeing the weapon profiles, how the attack and defend works, but like it's just opposed dice pools. All right, recruiting and equipping your crew. So like I said, 500 for a campaign, 1,000 for a skirmish. Every crew belongs to a faction fighting to survive, and you got to pick everything from that faction. As you make your choices, subtract the gold you have from your total. Any unspent gold can be put in your stash for later on. And then each crew list details which models are available to you and who they can recruit. Most lists include a model they must have, and then they're created, like their captain or cult leader. Weapon limitations. Some armaments are limited, so crew may purchase a cumulative total of 3 weapons with the firearm trait, so less guns to start. Crew pets. Some models will keep pets as animal companions to keep the crew in order or terrify their enemies. And at recruitment when trained during a campaign, each model that has the Handler X trait, a model with this trait can equip with X pets. So the more Handler X you have, the more you can buy. And then model weapon limitations, range. Unless otherwise stated in the rules, each model may carry up to 1 ranged weapon and up to 5 grenades at any given time. And then your combinations are 1 2-handed weapon or 2 1-handed weapons, or a single 1-handed weapon and a shield, or a single 1-handed weapon and a scrap weapon, or 2 scrap weapons. Then your minimum maximum values. So your minimum movement is 3 and endurance is 7, and your minimum wounds is 3. So you can always take at least 3 hits. Maximum's 9, maximum endurance is 3+, and 20 wounds. And then you get a nice handy crew sheet that is actually a separate download on here that you can print off and put all this stuff in. So some of the factions available, obviously pirates in the Royal Navy, real toffs, privateers, which are pirates kind of, but with a mark, and then cultists. I love that there's cultists in here because it's got like weird sea monster-y people and stuff too. And you can see you gain some special crew traits in here as well. Like you can have Handler 3 on the captain, Handler 1 on a first mate, and he's a veteran. Proctor has the brute rule, Priest has a caster rule, Healer is a surgeon, and then Mercenaries have the cutthroat rule. When your privateer captain's recruited, roll from a skill in the skill list, and they're all going to have something like this. Then your faction trait, like for privateers, is they're driven by personal gain. Once per game, at the start of any round, they can take a free action to designate a single model as the one that's wanted. So like bounty hunters. All ranged and melee attacks against that model get +1 to hit, and any model that takes them out of action gets D6 gold for the crew. The cultists, though, they draw strength from dark rituals. Once per game at the start of any round, they can take a free action to perform the Ritual of Shadows, then roll a d6 for every model within 6 of the captain. On a 4+, they immediately move 3 inches toward or away the cultist captain, and this may cause them to fall. On a 6, they suffer D3 wounds as Eldritch Tentacles lash out, so he just summons like the darkness. And then the pirates, theirs is once per game, the captain can make a free action to declare shenanigans. For that round, any pirate model rolls a natural 6 for one or more attack dice, gets a single bonus action that can be used for a move or a taunt, because they're basically just wild at heart. And the Royal Navy gets hold the line as their free action. Until the end of the round, any Royal Navy model within 3 gets +1 to their endure near the captain, and they get +1 ranged melee attacks if they target an enemy model that's already been attacked by another Royal Navy, so they get to gang up. Nice simple crew lists. And then the crew traits. So like your Brute, if they take an enemy model out of action during a charge, they can make another free charge action, so they can bangarang like in Hook. The captain can do challenge to a duel, and then he has like additional things in here. The caster can make the cast spell action for all of those. It's a 7+ on 2d6, but then doubles my mishap. The Cutthroat may choose 3 numbers on a d20 when making a called shot with a grenade. A called shot is a success on any of those numbers. So basically, like you get like extra critical hits. Handler can get people higher pets. Surgeon can remove up to 2 wounds on a 7+. Veteran, they always fight first, even when they get charged. So they're hard fighters. And then movement, they've got the extra skills, melee, shooting, and smarts, and these can all be learned during the course of the campaign for XP. And here's some equipment examples. So like throwing axes, they get 2 attack dice, 6-inch range. Pistol can explode because it has fire, needs to be reloaded, 3 attack dice. Grenades, you can get scrap grenades or iron grenades, right? Called shot if you want, but they're limited. 3 attack dice for an iron grenade. Scrap grenades, something like a Molotov or a jar filled with oil. And then all of our melee stuff, like a hook or a short sword or an axe. It's got the parry rule, so you can still parry things. It's got 2 attacks, 200 weapons, 5 attack dice, but it's blunt and 2-handed. And then your hats give you abilities. So the more insane your hat is, the more bonuses you get to your taunt. So you can have like +3 if you're wearing a decorative headdress. And metal-lined hats give you +1 to your endurance, a helmet. Basic shield gives you +1 endure dice. Hide armor gives you a +1 to your endure value. And a chain shirt gives you +2. And then your pets give you all kinds of bonuses. +1 ranged attack dice for a parrot. +1 melee attack dice for a monkey. Your walrus gives you +2 wounds. An octopus gives you +2 melee attack dice. I love a giant Komodo dragon gives you +1 move and +3 wounds. And a giant crab gives you +3 move and +10 wounds because you can ride a giant crab apparently. It's just insane. I love how it just gets out of control immediately. Weapon traits, things like parry. If an attack hits a model with 1 or more parry weapons, rolls a natural 1. They take a wound because you parry. I'm going to call that riposte. And then reload, you can't fire it again until you take a reload action. 200 weapons give you -1 to your endure, right? Because you're harder to stop with the incoming attacks. And then we get all of our terrain and scenarios. So things like 1v1 games get 10. So there's everything from like a skirmish, a treasure hunt, thieves in the night, hostage rescue, shipwreck salvages, a market mayhem, escort the fancy man, island ambush, and mutiny in the shallows. And then finally a prison break. And then multiplayers are things like the final ritual, the dead village with zombies, the cannonball catastrophe, or the giant crab escape. And all these are lovingly illustrated with their various rewards for the winner, the loser, and the person drawing, and how kind of XP you get. These will be real familiar to anybody who's played like Relic Blade or Somme or Mordheim. I like that they each get a drawing. The island ambush, mutiny in the shallows near a boat, so you can play on your boat, and then the prison break. And then finally, the multiplayer stuff. So we got our final ritual, the dead village, the cannonball catastrophe, an abandoned fortress house, and the giant crab escape. No one wants to fight a giant crab. There he is. There he is. Look at that. Being ridden by a captain. And then we got our campaign stuff. So in one-on-one battles, I'll roll a d10 or choose from the range of unique scenarios. And then afterwards, you're going to make your post-game injuries. Obviously, you get some underdog bonuses here too. XP bonuses for fighting. This is a pretty classic way of handling uneven forces. And then people can die. And if they do, they may not be reallocated to the crew stash or under their models. If they die, their equipment's just lost. And the crew with the next highest XP value assumes command. They gain the captain and handler 3 trait. In the case of a tie, XP you can choose. Post-game sequence. So first, roll for your lasting injuries, gain XP in advance, check for your mutiny. If any other crew member now has a higher XP value than the captain, so it's very Gorka Morka in that way. You might have to have a fight, collect your gold, trade, calculate your new crew value, and then go off. So again, lasting injuries is a D66 table. So you could survive against the odds on a double one, get put on trial, become hardened. Huge number of these things, obviously. Dead on a double six. 21 to 36 is a full recovery. A lot of these are pretty familiar. And that's it. We've done it. Another one, Untitled Pirate Game. I'm just going to go back to the giant crab as the thing I leave off on because look at how fucking cool that is. A classic in, I would say, indie sleaze skirmish games. And if you like the idea of like a Forbidden style Mordheim, Port Royale, but with a little more fantasy and insanity in it, this is probably for you. Tons of great miniatures out there, obviously, in this genre. And if you want to get more into the fantasy side too, I think Black Scorpion had a whole range of like dwarf pirates and undead pirates and stuff. So you could go to town basically with the cultist rules. And 4 simple factions mean that you've got enough different stuff to play with, but they're all generally kind of the same, that your collection could like span multiple crews and stuff too. Do appreciate any pirate game that doesn't make me paint a pirate ship unless I want to for terrain, because that's a big commitment. If you've ever painted a pirate ship before, it's a lot of work. It takes a lot of time, and it's one of those things where if you're going to do it with like wrapping little ropes and stuff too, man, you got to have some patience that I do not possess in any way, shape, or form. So we've wrapped another one. So there is Untitled Pirate Game, Stewart Silva's, I would say, like, just fun pirate game, super easy to probably parse and play. And again, if you've played any of these previous sort of titles or styles of this warband style game, like Mordheim or Somme or Relic Blade or any of that stuff, you'll probably pick this one up pretty fast. This would be a good accessible one for someone to paint 2 sides of, and then have it the gaming night as like a pickup game to play with their friends. So we are done until next week. If you are watching the Indie Hour or want to nominate a game for the Indie Hour, you can jump on GMG's Patreon. That's where these games get selected, put in a list, voted on, and then finally put up in lights. And a huge thank you to my patrons for picking this one. This is really cool. And we'll be back next week. Now, if you're watching this live on YouTube, we record these every Wednesday. So the previous week's recording goes out on Wednesday, and we're recording the next one that day. So you can get in. And we usually hang out for about like half an hour on either side, and just talk about the week, talk about what's going on, get some more insider track stuff on plans for the future. And a lot of these games, that's how they end up on the game table, painted for. I think we've done Full Spectrum Dominance, 14 Doom just wrapped up. We've got Flames of Orion about to wrap up. We did Threnodicy. Like a ton of these end up getting played just because someone from either the GMG patron or my local game buddies watches this video and goes like, I want to play that one, and then we end up playing it. So that's usually how these things get done. So yeah, thanks again to my patrons, and for you guys for watching. This is Al Mash. Have a good one.